Okay, so today we are covering basic anxiety disorders. So first, what is anxiety? So anxiety disorders, the state of fear, anxiety, has three basic components. So first, subjective reports. So this is the individual person reporting to you feelings of tension, of apprehension, of dread. There is also a behavioral response where the individual avoids whatever it is that is causing the anxiety. And that behavioral response of avoidance actually reinforces this idea that, yep, this is something that I should be scared of. And then there are also physiological responses. So these are the physical things that happen. Your heart starts racing, your palms get sweaty, you might feel really hot, really flushed. So these are the things that are important in understanding anxiety disorders. Anxiety disorders are actually the single largest mental health problem in the United States. So if you go into any kind of mental health setting, you will absolutely work with people who have anxiety. Okay, so specific anxiety disorders. So we have what's called panic disorder. And with panic disorder, these are characterized by recurrent uncued panic attacks. Okay, so a panic attack. This happens when an individual basically feels like they are having some kind of like a heart attack almost. It includes heart palpitations, dizziness, faintness, and panic disorder then results from the interpretation of these anxiety symptoms. So for individuals who have, this feeling of dizziness, these heart palpitations, they feel like they might be having a heart attack. If they interpret that as, oh, it's just stress, it's going to pass, they're less likely to form some kind of panic disorder. If, however, the individual is like, oh my God, I'm dying, I'm having a heart attack right now, they are more likely to form panic disorder. Oftentimes with panic disorder, individuals have this fear that the panic attack is going to happen again, oftentimes in a public place. So let's say, you go to the mall, you have a panic attack when you're at the mall, and you start to then associate being at the mall or being in public in general with the likelihood of having another panic attack. And then the fear is you're going to have this panic attack in a public place. No one is going to be there to help you. So what do? You start to avoid going out in public altogether. So that's the behavioral response. That can lead to this concept here called agoraphobia, where the individual basically stops going out into public, stops leaving the house because they are so scared that they're going to have a panic attack again in a public setting and no one will be there to help them. So to avoid that, they just stay home. They stay inside because it's very rare for an individual to have a panic attack in in the home setting. The thing about panic attacks, though, is that you can't actually die from having a panic attack, okay? So if you're ever around someone who's having one, rest assured that they're not going to die from a panic attack. So other particular anxiety disorder syndromes or clinical diagnoses, phobias. So with a phobia, then, you have an intense and persistent fear of an object or situation that actually poses no real threat. So let's say that you have a phobia of clowns, or you have a phobia of spiders. You will then avoid whatever it is that you're scared of. So that is the phobic stimulus. So with this specific phobia, the fear becomes very, very intense. It becomes very excessive. You have these thoughts of escaping. So you encounter a clown and you want to run away. You want to run in the other direction. And the avoidance of clowns actually maintains the phobia. It helps to reinforce the idea that, yes, this is something that I should be scared of. Very common to have phobias. Most people, however, can manage their specific phobias without having any real difficulty. Social phobia, though, this is a particular type of phobia where individuals avoid certain actions in front of other people because they fear that they might be embarrassed or humiliated. So common social phobias include public speaking, eating in public, or using public restrooms. The fear restricts individual choice, individual freedom, and might actually interfere with work. And distinguishing social phobia from other syndromes can be difficult sometimes. So often individuals who have social phobia recall that in childhood they were very, very shy. However, though, social phobia does differ from shyness in the sense that with social phobia, these individuals fear certain situations. With shyness, oftentimes you show this across the board. And with shyness, once the individual becomes comfortable in that situation, oftentimes the shyness abates. With social phobia, though, the phobia does not go away, no matter how comfortable the individual becomes in certain situations. Obsessive-Compulsive Disorder, another anxiety disorder, something that is characterized by two things, obsessions and compulsions. So with the obsession, this is the thought, right? An obsessive thought or an image. It's intruding, it's irresistible. And then the compulsion, the action that is related to that obsessive thought. That thought that basically causes a lot of anxiety, and so the individual performs some kind of compulsive behavior to quell the anxiety that's caused by the obsessive thinking. So for example, an individual might have an obsessive thought that there are germs everywhere. So the individual then performs compulsive cleaning rituals, washing hands hundreds of times per day, maybe washing your hands so much that your hands are actually cracked and bleeding to deal with the anxiety that that obsessive thought about germs creates. The important thing with obsessive-compulsive disorder is that these individuals know that this ritualized behavior doesn't make any sense. They know that it is completely irrational. However, the sense of guilt that they feel if they do not perform the compulsive, ritualized, repeated behaviors, the sense of guilt that they feel is huge. And so they feel that they have to, they are compelled to perform the compulsive behaviors to address that guilt, to address that anxiety. Posttraumatic stress disorder is another anxiety disorder, often called PTSD. And so with post-traumatic stress, the individual experiences some kind of psychological trauma. Okay, so this can be for combat veterans, individuals coming back from a war zone, for individuals who have, let's say, gone through a car accident, maybe someone who's experienced rape. All of those things represent traumatic events. And they have this reaction to the traumatic event after the event has happened. And it can involve feelings of fear, of helplessness, of horror, psychic numbing, where they don't experience emotion the way that they used to. They might also experience an extreme reliving of the trauma, increased physiological arousal. So they're constantly on edge, right? And constantly fearing that they are reliving the trauma. For individuals who experience PTSD, there are a number of factors that affect the likelihood of the PTSD. So certain features of the trauma over here, so the intensity, the duration of the trauma, those can all impact the likelihood that the person will experience it. Features of the individual person, particularly looking here at feelings of guilt. So sometimes individuals will experience what's called survivor's guilt. They escaped a disaster and other people died, and they might feel really, really guilty that they lived when other people did not, and that can heighten the PTSD experience. Additionally, looking at the experience that they have with the social environment after the trauma. So if they have access to quality social support, if they have a support network, they're less likely to experience PTSD symptoms. However, if they're exposed to other major stressful events, so let's say you're a combat veteran, you come back from your tour of duty, and you get back and you're not the same person anymore, and suddenly your family is not supporting you, maybe you and your partner decide to split, you get a divorce. That's an additional major stressor that can absolutely heighten the PTSD experience. Then we have generalized anxiety disorder. And so with generalized anxiety disorder, it means that this is a state of generalized worry, okay? So you don't just worry about one particular thing like you do with specific phobia. Your anxiety is spread. It's diffuse. It is about multiple different things. So you might worry about your family, you worry about money, you worry about work. The emphasis is on worrying about worrying. And you handle your fears by engaging in cycles of unproductive worry. You have multiple sources of concern, you overestimate threats in the environment, and you're always assuming that the worst is going to happen. You're catastrophizing. You have continuous, uncontrollable anxiety or worry, feelings of foreboding and dread. And so oftentimes this results in a state of restlessness for these individuals where they have difficulty concentrating. They might be very irritable and they might be very jittery.